Hello there. Welcome to a weekly Bible study we do here on this Facebook page. So grateful for Meta that we have a space to freely talk about the Spirit of God and how we can connect with the Great Spirit and operate our lives out of love here on earth. May our energies connect with each other as we share in love the words of this message tonight. Last week, just as a quick recap, we talked about surrendering control, and that when we surrender control, it's an act of love. And we were looking at Acts 21 and in the reflection of Paul's life as he's journeying back to Jerusalem and he's going to be met with persecution, and that everybody's telling him, this is what's going to happen to you when you get there. And so that's being translated as, don't go, don't go. And yet Paul knew that's exactly where he needed to be. And a couple weeks ago, we did a study in some of the verses here that I entitled, Face the Fear, right? Run toward it, don't run from it. And how we are called sometimes to do difficult things. And that doesn't mean that we're not supposed to do them. It means surrendering control and allowing our obedience to God's will in our lives to be done. And sometimes those are hard things that we're having to do. And so sometimes faith means surrendering our desire to control situations and what happens next in our life, and just surrendering to trust God even when it hurts, that ultimately this is the next step of the journey, and growth comes in pain sometimes. This week, I titled this message, Shared Courage. And after Paul and the people that he's with stay with Philip in Caesarea for many days, we pick up in Acts chapter 15. This is just a couple verses tonight, but there's so much in it, and I don't want to I don't want to delay anymore to jump into it. I'm excited about it tonight. After these days in Caesarea with Philip, we got ready. Luke is writing this and he's including himself in it. Timothy's there with Paul and some other people that are traveling with Paul. We got ready and started on our way up to Jerusalem. The rest of this 4.5 to 5 week trek that they're taking is by land. It says some of the people, some of the mentees, some of the apprentices, some of the disciples from Caesarea also came with us, taking us to Nason of Cyprus, a disciple of long standing with whom we were to stay. So Paul and his crew, who've been staying with Philip for many, many days. Agabus came in, as we studied last week, a great prophet from Judea, and took the belt from around Paul's waist and Agabus tied his own hands and feet with it and said, the man who owns this belt, the person who owns this belt, this is what's going to happen to them when they are in Jerusalem. And Paul says, I get it. I know that you're prophesying, you're forthtelling what's going to happen, but I'm going to go anyway. Surrendering control is an act of love last week, right? And so the people who were with Paul, who've been on this journey, this is his third missionary trip. He's coming back to Jerusalem, and they are not resigned, if you will, but they are resolved that this is God's will and that Paul is going back to Jerusalem. They are going to go with him. And there's some people with Caesarea that are like, hey, we'll roll up with you. Let's go, right? And so they went with him, and they took Paul and the people who are with him over to see Nason, a man in Cyprus. And that's where they stayed for a little bit on their way over to Jerusalem. The title of tonight's message is Shared Courage. I want to talk about shared courage and solidarity. There is proximity to suffering. And what I mean by that is these spiritually woke brothers and sisters of Caesarea knew they couldn't stop what was coming for Paul. They asked him to stay behind and not go there, knowing what was going to happen. And Paul continues to say, it's going to be hard, but I'm called to go there anyway. I already know. And Paul's going to go to Jerusalem. That's it. Suffering awaited him. He knew it. But they didn't distance themselves from the danger of it. They didn't say, okay, well, bye-bye and good luck. Don't say we didn't tell you. No. They loaded up and they went with him. They didn't distance themselves from the danger. Instead, they walked with him into it. That's the heart of love. Not avoiding pain, but standing beside one another in it. And there's application to these words of truth, of this account, that can be applied today. Real community isn't about celebrating comfort and the wins. It's about solidarity. Walking the hard road together, even when the outcome can't be changed. So let me ask you, when someone you care about is facing hardship, do you tend to stay close and walk with them? Or do you retreat into safety, give yourself a clear distance because there's safety there in the silence? See, that's what these brothers and sisters did. They accepted that they couldn't protect Paul from the path that he was on, the path that God had laid out for him. But what they could do was walk with him until he reached the place where Paul would stand for his next place of obedience. What it says to us really is this. Sometimes we want to run from pain for ourselves, and sometimes we want to run from the pain of others. Or we feel helpless that we can't solve it, right? We're people of we're fixers. We're problem solvers. We want to fix everything. But in Acts 21, it shows us that walking with someone in their hardest moments, being present in the difficulty, offering shelter, traveling with them, is deeply spiritual. It's deeply spiritual. I recently helped a person who was struggling under the weight of grief and depression of a recent loss of a family member that had been living with them for some time. And they passed away a few months ago, and now they're left with all of their loved ones' belongings in their house. Everything. Because they lived with them for years before they passed. And now they're stuck with having to look at everything, go through everything, pack up everything. And they couldn't do it. They were paralyzed under the weight of the memories and the loss. They just couldn't do it. They stopped calling people. They stopped responding to voicemail, text messages, phone calls, knocks at the door. They were riddled with grief and depression and despair. And so my loved one and I made plans to come alongside and help, to pack up everything that was in this person's house and put it in storage so that it can be gone through at a later time, when emotions aren't as gripping. It's in a neutral space where other family members can come as well. We couldn't fix my dear friend who's grieving. We couldn't. It's not our job to. But we could come alongside and help provide some space for them so that they could breathe a little bit in the moment emotionally and regain their footing. And it might not have been safe in that this person's been under it for so long. What if we just walk up into their house and start ripping out stuff? And what is that going to do to them? And what triggers are going to come up as we move things and pack things and put them away? It might not have been safe, but it was good. Ultimately, it was good. And the world's view is that love protects at all costs, even the cost of truth. But the kingdom view, the kingdom of God view, is that real love sometimes walks into places of risk, of pain, and atrocities for the sake of something greater, eternal. And what my loved one and I did for this dear friend was an act of love. The motivation was love. The intention underneath it was love. And although we didn't change where they were, we could help them and stand alongside them in the space. Death isn't the end, right? And God's willingness to allow suffering never means that God is indifferent. In the kingdom of God, death doesn't get the final word. There's eternity. It's infinite. And we're called to faithful surrender, not reckless heroics. Paul wasn't seeking danger for danger's sake in order to be some hero. He was seeking obedience. And sometimes we are called to walk into dark places. The disciples, the apprentices, weren't ignoring the danger either. When those people of Caesarea said, we'll go with you and walk with you. Because see, proximity puts them in the same risk. They're walking in with Paul. So they weren't ignoring the danger. They did everything that they could to warn Paul, but in the end, they trusted that God's will was going to be done. So the key takeaway for us today is that sometimes we want to run from the pain of others. Sometimes we feel helpless if we can't solve it for ourselves or solve it for others. But in Acts 21, it shows us that walking with someone in their hardest moments to pick up and say, you know what? I know this is hard. I know you're going this way. Let me go with you and walk with you through this hard time. Let me walk with you through your house and take these memories and box them up for you so that you can breathe a little bit in your space. Right? Being present in these moments, offering shelter, traveling with them, Paul, to Jerusalem. These are deeply spiritual things. They're acts of love. And what these Caesareans were doing by going with Paul is sharing courage. Real community isn't just about the good times, unicorns and rainbows. It's about sharing your courage and walking the hard road together, even when the outcome can't be changed. I wrote a blessing to leave you with tonight, and I pray this blessing over you. May the Great Spirit fill your heart with shared courage, the kind that does not shrink from the hard road, but walks faithfully besides those who suffer. May you find strength not in avoiding pain, but in bearing it together, knowing that your presence is a loving and holy gift. As the people of Caesarea walked with Paul toward his next step of obedience, may you walk faithfully with others, even when you cannot change the outcome. May the light of the great Creator remind you that God's will is not always safe, but it's always ultimately good for eternal purposes. And that death and fear never have the final word. May your life reflect faithful surrender, deep compassion, steadfast love, becoming a shelter and a blessing for all who journey with you and for all with whom you journey. And so it is. Peace and love be with you.